You are watching Cyber Live. Welcome to this Fireside chat and where we are going to be talking about AI and machine learning in cybersecurity. Joining me, we have Ken Urquhart, who is a Global Vice President of 5G at Zscaler. Ken is a leader in Zero Trust Enterprise Cybersecurity, holds 3 degrees in physics, and has previously held executive roles at IBM and Microsoft. Prior to joining Zscaler, Ken consulted with Fortune 2000 companies on 5G, AI, and cybersecurity. We're also going to be joined by Renata Spinks, who is Assistant IT Director, Deputy CIO of Information, Command, Control, Communications, and Computers with the United States Marine Corps. Renata was appointed to Senior Executive Service in August 2021, having joined the Executive Service as Senior Leader in August 2018, serving at Marine Forces Cyberspace Command as the nation's first cyber technology officer. In this role, she deployed cyber-based technology and served as the executive sponsor for intelligence-informed defense cyber operations. Welcome, Ken and Renata.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome both. So we've got quite a lot to get through, so I'm going to jump straight into it if that's okay. And we're going to kick it off by looking at ethical AI. So I'm going to come to you first, Ken. So do you think enterprise-wide AI is secure enough to protect a business from an attack?
It's a good question. Great way. Thank you very much. Great to be here. AI in itself is not. There's this old joke that how many people do you need to protect your organization from cyber attack? And I ask, how many people do you have? And they'll say, I have 1,000, I have 10,000. I go, great, hire 10,000 cybersecurity people to stand behind every employee telling them when it's safe to click and when it's not safe to click. The truth is, we are overwhelmed with cyber attacks. And I think I'm seeing a statistic that cybersecurity people at an average enterprise may see 20% of questionable data that suggests there may be an attack. And you need AI to augment that, to sift through the masses of telemetry and point out what's odd, different, not normal, and to bring those to the attention of a very much overworked cybersecurity staff. In that way, it really can help. And on the other side, it doesn't need complex AI. I've seen tremendously interesting things done with very simple AI. Things like simple regression can get you an amazing amount of data that is worthwhile to look at. You know, don't make it too complicated. You can do tremendous things with just the simplest of algorithms. It's getting it the right anomalies to your staff so they can act on it. It's not going to replace them by any means, but it is going to augment the people you have.
Yeah, so this leads to you, Renata. So how are you using, data to modernize your workforce and keep up with all these changing technologies?
So, I mean, that's a real great question. There is a few things that we're doing. I'm going to talk a little bit of operational, a little bit of functional, and also programmatically and functionally with the Marine Corps. The Commandant has put out all kinds of intentions. And when you set intentions, you can find those in the Commandant's Talent Management 2030 is the name of that document. And that's where he's an author that I love to read. The way he writes and the way he communicates intent is different than I've ever seen with military officers. So I'm appreciative of that. But the way that document outlines for the next set of years into 2030 of how we manage our talent, I think that's probably the most critical piece when you're talking about how we're using data to modernize our workforce. That talent management piece, it talks about us identifying, you just heard Ken talk about anomalies and using the correct algorithms that can give you those indicators of either success, or if we're talking cybersecurity, compromise, or if we're talking about planning, decision making. So it really depends on, what are you trying to get after? What are you trying to figure out as you use data and artificial intelligence and machine learning to not just augment, but what I would say is to continue to support the mission. there's so many things that as a human being we bring to the fight, that if we are bogged down trying to sift through millions and millions and millions of data and logs, you're taking away that efficacy and the efficiency that that human being brings to strategically analyze the information that that algorithm is giving. God forbid it's erroneous. And, Ken and I talked about that this morning on the accuracy. So as we look at our workforce, we're looking at how we can make them more lethal. And that's where data science and the ability to understand what the data is telling us is also important. As we think about our IT civilians and the intel space, not just our active duty Marines, we have a prototype called the Information Development Institute, and we call it the IDI. That's a place where we deliver training on these kinds of capabilities, such as artificial intelligence and machine learning. But there's also another plethora of ways where our cyber warriors, that's what I kind of call them, our cyber warriors can go into this particular platform and learn all kinds of educational and development opportunities. And lastly, is MOSs in the Marine Corps and in the services. You have what at the colleges it's like a major or a minor that you're pursuing, and so you matriculate through college and you end up coming out with a major. Well, for in the Marine Corps, you hear the word MOS, and so those MOSs is what those Marines are studying. They sign these contracts to come in and say, "Hey, I'm raising my right hand to serve my country," in parallel to developing this particular skill set and contributing that to the fight. And so that MOS that we're thinking about now, or that we're doing now, is 0673. And that is our application developers MOS. That is an exciting opportunity to enable Marines to code and to partner with industry experts and educators and people who can tell us, like Ken probably needs to be part of our, I'm thinking now he needs to be part of our IDI and our MOS team as we think through how those areas of educating our Marines and civilians can also help develop that workforce. And that has evolved into these innovation challenges. And that's where Marines get to show what they've learned. And not only what they've learned, but it's a playground. It allows them to show us what those AI enabled or machine learning programming that they are getting really good at, by the way, and they get to contribute that and showcase it. And that playground is a safe environment so that they can innovate and not put any of our warfighting systems in danger. So those are ways that I could talk all day about how we're using data to manage our workforce, because that is an area that's very important to me as well as the Commandant of the Marine Corps. But I'll just stop right there.
No, thank you. That was a really interesting insights there.
Kelly, if I could just add one thing, is I've worked with a lot of cybersecurity professionals over the years, here, Europe, the Gulf, and I really admire the ones, the most effective ones, the ones I've had the most adventures with, were out of the armed forces. They get a cybersecurity training second to none because of the risks they have to mitigate every single day. And just as great admiration for the quality of the training that any member of the armed forces in cybersecurity receives. And it certainly shows when they come out into the civilian world.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so we're going to move on to a bit about, zero-day exploits. And I think it's a big topic. So I'm going to come to you first, Ken. So could you just tell me a little bit about what zero day is and how could it be eradicated, or even if you think it could or couldn't?
Well, again, great question. 0 days, meaning I can attack you through some weakness in your software system that generally isn't known to exist. And a lot of effort in the hacking community, especially the nation state actors, goes into finding those security holes and exploiting them. One problem we face in the whole art of computer programming and software engineering is that there is no path to proving any single program mathematically and logically is correct, meaning I can't prove to you that any piece of software is going to do what I think it's going to do or what I claim I want it to do. There's a huge area of research in mathematics for proving program correctness. And you can do it with very simple programs. When you have many, many different microservices interacting over a network live, it's almost impossible. And so, no, you'll never stop a zero-day attack. What can you do with AI in that area is you can say to AI, I'm going to expose you to program behavior, and I want you to find things that don't look usual. And then you hope and you say, here's some examples of 0 days that we didn't know about. Can you find patterns that us humans looking at it might miss? And the AI will come up with some examples, and you'll look at them and test them. And then on average, you want it to point out, you'd rather wish it to err on finding something odd and bringing it to my attention as soon as possible. Is it going to be 100% accurate? No, it's not, because the amount of programming is still a human endeavor, and we have really amazing ways of missing things. And that's just us. And you hope that the AI can at least give you leverage to find more of those faster, can say, hey, like in our work, we do application fingerprinting, meaning it says this database does the following. This database talks to other processes. This database talks certain protocols over certain ports. And when it stops doing that, when it starts doing things like, hey, that database in engineering wants to talk to the financial system, is that normal? No, it's not. You better bring that to somebody's attention.
No, thank you. So, well, linking on to what Ken said here, Renat, how do you think AI could help defend against zero-day exploits?
Well, I think the way we can use artificial intelligence to defend against, I would say it's more readiness. It's a question of being ready, because it's not if it's going to happen. It's when it's going to happen, and then not only how do you respond, but how can you also create as much resiliency that you can to help avoid some of the white noise that you're gonna experience. So having the flexibility to adjust is, in our opinion, what the Marine Corps is focused on is the infinite game, if I can quote Simon Sinek, is our network modernization plan. And that plan is never ending. It's full of tasks that talk about our future investments. And two of those investments I want to talk about, which is our federated identity management and the way we manage our identities, because it's all about the data, and the adversary is on the hunt for credentials for access. So identity is so important. And then we have to move towards that autonomous network defense. That's how we take the advantages of artificial intelligence and all the problem solving that industry has learned. And some of the research and development opportunities that have been identified as blind spots. We have to continue to invest in those spaces so that we can leverage instrumentation, we can improve our operations while not affecting the mission. Because unfortunately for the services, we don't have the luxury of taking systems offline, going into a test bed environment, and playing in that playground that I told you about with our innovation challenges. Sometimes we just don't have that luxury. So we have to patch on the go instantly. Ken said it best, never knowing if that patch is if it's going to actually behave the way it's supposed to. So we have to be smart enough, vigilant enough, kind of like Firewatch in the military, right? Just because you get into a space of, okay, well, who has Firewatch tonight? It can become very complacent, and it can also become something that's routine. And so we can't allow complacency to come into the space of, well, that may be an anomaly. I'm not going to tell Ken that I've noticed something going on that's weird. We'll just see what happens. We don't have the opportunities to do that. And so we have to remain vigilant. We have to continue to fund research and development and emerging technology. And then we have to use cybersecurity as the means to transform from being so labor intensive, error prone to managing personnel who are overworked. By the way, we are all, trying to find 24 hours in the 24 hours that are given to us every day. And so making sure that network operation, network monitoring, and defense capabilities are in place as efficient as possible. And I like to say as efficient as possible because I like to spend time in communicating the risk that commander has accepted, because that is the first step to understanding where your defenses are and how your incident response is going to occur, or what does right look like. It's all in the data, and it's all in the accuracy as close as possible, and those different models that we use from a criteria perspective of, some spaces I can accept risk, other areas is zero tolerance, and then there is some also areas where it's tolerance but at a certain degree, and that's where you think about firewalls, you think about in our space on the tactical side there, I may accept risk for information that is about how many times a computer went down. I may accept risk on that particular report, but I'm not going to accept risk on why the computer went down. I need those logs to understand. I don't need to know how many times, as critical to how many times did it go down because it felt like a denial of service. So those kinds of risk acceptance models is what we need artificial intelligence and machine learning to do that work for us, because I can't foot stomp enough the error prone that we have in human nature. Is just like change is inevitable, error is inevitable. And so how can we reduce that risk? And so that's what we're focusing on. There's no one size fits all solution. So we're always getting ready and adjusting to change. And, I've gotten quoted a couple times about saying easy peasy. I'm changing the easy peasy to it is simple in concept, difficult in execution.
No, I like that statement. That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. And like that speaks to another thing about AI and machine learning. As humans, our brain loves to see things change. You're sitting there in a security operations center looking at line after line after line of text scrolling in front of you, looking through logs. Your brain goes, I've seen this before. Yeah. Kind of goes to sleep.
Yeah.
AI doesn't. AI is a very simplistic approach. It's going to look for patterns. It's going to look for tens, hundreds, thousands, millions, and it's never going to get tired. It's going to work 24/7. It will always be fascinated to find that same anomaly and bring it to your attention. And this lets humans focus on what they do best. Focus on the things that change. Let the machine look through the terabytes, petabytes of telemetry. It won't get bored. Humans do. That's how we make mistakes. And that's how AI can augment us and keep us sharp.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah. So before we end this discussion, we're going to move on to some questions that we have had from the audience. So I'm going to come to you first again, Ken. I think this one's a very interesting one personally. So do you think AI can really replace humans?
Dull, repetitive, boring tasks? Yes. Can it replace us and think? Machines don't think right now. We'd like to think machines think. We'd like to be afraid of them, or we'd like to say they'll take over all the menial tasks, or they'll take over writing of programs. I'm afraid that AI and machine learning are statistical constructs. They look for patterns. They separate a bunch of data into buckets and say, it's kind of like this. That's extremely helpful, but it's not going to think. It's not, AI can write a book. Yes, it can write a book. Do I want to read it? Does it have a story that engages me? Does it tell me something human about how we are and how we grow? No. It's a nice copycat. There's a thing about cargo cults where during World War II, the military came to islands in the Pacific and set up, built airstrips, built airplanes. And the locals had no knowledge of this. They got all excited and they built bamboo airplanes to look like it. They couldn't fly. And it's called the cargo cults. And, AI is kind of like that. They can do certain things. The other one is, you can ride a motorcycle, but do you know how to fix the engine? AI can drive the car. AI can't fix your engine for you. I think that's enough metaphors.
It's an interesting way of looking at things. Sometimes I think people might get ahead of themselves and think, it's a new revolution and that is all going to replace us. Yeah.
Look, our hearts race ahead. The technology zooms ahead of our hearts, and we need to be careful about that. Making decisions about what is appropriate for us, even though the technology can do it, should we do it? These are questions that have always been part of our society, and we must always face those.
No, thank you. Yeah, so we'll move on to a question for you, Renata. So how is the Marine Corps modernizing its network, and what impact is this having on your cybersecurity itself?
So you heard me talk earlier about the network modernization plan. We're going to continue to foot stomp it. It will become equal to the words zero trust. Think Marine Corps, network mod. That's, Force Design 2030 and talent management. Those are the three things when you think Marine Corps, Ms. Spinks, you should think, network modernization. It focuses on cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is, in some places you hear user experience is the focus of that customer base. Our focus is cybersecurity. We put the security before the user experience, and sometimes we are held accountable to that by the many help desk tickets we get, or some of those emails I receive that says, Teams is failing, ma'am, or my VPN shut down, or something like that with connectivity. But I talked about risk area earlier. So that's an area we accept risk, but in cybersecurity, we don't. There's many lines of efforts and taskings in that network modernization plan. And under the portfolio of cybersecurity, we focus on three things: automation, integration, and sensing. So as we sensor the network, you start thinking about Ken and all those different logs, using artificial intelligence and machine learning opportunities to sift through all of that censoring that we've done. I mean, we have a hybrid environment. And when I say hybrid, we have capabilities that we are managing on premises, but we also have capabilities and resources that we're consuming from a cloud service provider. And it's not just one of them. We have multiple cloud service providers that we're working with. So we have, So we have to make sure that when we're modernizing, we are enabling our cyber warriors or cyber relevant people to, to divest from legacy or what General Weiss likes to say from aviation, traditional applications and technology. The adversaries are getting smarter and smarter and smarter, and I will never take any credit from how sophisticated their 24/7 job that they have created for themselves. They don't take a break, just like the machines don't take a break. And most of them are using artificial intelligence and machine learning for their tools and techniques. So it's so important that we modernize our network in a space of defense against those kinds of capabilities, as well as the ability to censor and give us the conditions that are set to not only have knowledge of the network and know what's happening on our network, no matter which facet it is, whether that's incident response, intrusion detection, whether that's a user experience that we're trying to improve, whether it's executing payment, whether it is pre-positioning in our logistics team. Doesn't matter what the mission thread is. The capabilities that are needed are the same. You got to have a banging infrastructure. It has to be, like I like to say, Gucci tight. It has to be tight. You have to be able to take advantage of the resources. If you're stuck on 95 on a holiday weekend and you can't move any further than the traffic that you're running into, that's what your network is like. If you don't invest in infrastructure, you're on the highway trying to get somewhere and you just can't go. So you have to invest in the infrastructure, and that's one thing that we do. We've invested in a platform to make sure that secure DevOps is in place and that we set the conditions for the Fleet Marine Forces to be able to do that. And then lastly is that cybersecurity. So we start with cyber and we end with cyber. Everything in between is all about the user experience, network modernization, talent management, all to support 2030. Not so much about what we're doing today, but how do we continue to evolve as technology, like Ken said, as technology does not slow down. So how do we create such a roadway that we're not knee-jerk reacting, we're being proactive, and we have a lot of versatility to adopt technology as we see fit.
And just to magnify that, we're talking cyber warfare is asymmetric warfare. It's a siege. We are defending, and we're being attacked randomly by anyone and everyone. I have to be 100% effective. I must ward off all attacks, whereas any random cyber attacker only has to be lucky once to get by.
Yeah.
The amount of effort we have to put in is enormous compared to the amount of effort any single hacker, whether it's someone working out of a basement flat for fun, or whether it's a nation state actor who has 100 people who show up daily and their one goal is to get into one system in some branch of the military.
Absolutely. Think about that. When most people approach me and the first thing they say is, well, I read in an article the Pentagon was, attacked, in 2015 or 2017, or, one of the bases or one of the federal agencies experienced some type of infiltration. But go with me for a second and think about a Marine that's in the middle of nowhere, away from family, friends, and even counterparts like yourself, and they can't connect. They're in a limited environment, but they still need to be able to communicate. We call that the D deal. And that's the kind of conversation that when we really start thinking about problem solving, artificial intelligence and machine learning within the D deal environment and being able to access critical resources, that's the problem that, we need industry's help on solving. But it also is an area of focus within our network modernization plan that truly is foundational to everything we do. Because not saying that any mission is more important than the other, but I will tell you that connectivity at all times is the main event. It is the main area of focus. No matter where the Marines are, no matter if they are in an integrated environment, falling in on the Navy or, behind enemy lines with the Army or supporting the Air Force or vice versa. Those kinds of integrated, you heard about JADC2, all of that is so important. That joint all domain command and control is very critical. And artificial intelligence and machine learning has to be part of that conversation. But foundational to all of that is, how do you make it secure enough to operate on a bad day?
Brilliant. Thank you both. We're going to have to wrap it up there as we're running out of time for today. But thank you both to Ken and Nat for joining us. It was a very interesting discussion.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having us.
And thank you for all joining us here for this discussion, and make sure you stay tuned to check out the rest of our speakers on Cyber Live.